So here's something I find really fascinating about Japanese history. Most people, when they think about the Sengoku period, the age of the great samurai warlords, they think of Oda Nobunaga, epic battles, and towering castles, and that era is incredible. We'll get there, but what almost nobody talks about is the event that actually started all of it. There was a 10-year war that happened right before the Sengoku period began. No clear winner, no hero, no grand resolution, just a slow, messy collapse that changed Japan forever. It's called the Ōnin War, and honestly, it's one of the most interesting stories I've come across. Alright, so a little context, because this actually makes the story way more interesting. For over 100 years before this war, Japan had been run by a system called the Ashikaga Shogunate. Think of it like a military government based in Kyoto that was supposed to keep everything running smoothly across the country. And for a while, it worked. But by the mid-1400s, something was shifting. Local lords, called daimyo, were getting stronger, more independent. The central government in Kyoto was losing its grip, slowly but clearly. Now, to deal with this, the shogunate had this strategy: bring the most powerful daimyo to Kyoto, keep them at court, keep them close. Smart idea, right? Except what it actually did was put the most ambitious, most powerful men in Japan, all in the same city, where they could watch each other, compete with each other, and wait. The whole thing was like a room full of tension, just looking for a reason to release. And in 1464, it found one. The shogun at the time was Ashikaga Yoshimasa, the 8th shogun of Japan. And here's the thing about Yoshimasa: he was a genuinely talented person, great taste in art, loved poetry, deeply into the aesthetics of Japanese culture. He's actually the one who built what later became the famous Silver Pavilion in Kyoto. But running a country, that was not really his thing. By 1464, Yoshimasa had no son, so he called on his younger brother, Yoshimi, who was living as a Buddhist monk at the time, and said, "Hey, I need you to come back. You're going to be my heir." Yoshimi agreed. 1 year later, Yoshimasa's wife gave birth to a son. Now suddenly, there were two possible heirs, and almost immediately, the two most powerful figures in the country picked sides. On one side, Hosokawa Katsumoto, the shogun's own deputy, backed Yoshimi, the brother. On the other, Yamana Sozen, one of the most powerful lords in Japan, controlling 6 provinces, backed the newborn son, pushed by the boy's mother, who had zero intention of letting her child lose this. Both sides started quietly gathering troops near Kyoto, thousands of soldiers, then tens of thousands. And in 1467, things finally broke. The Ōnin War had begun. Now, what's worth understanding here is that this wasn't really a war in the way we usually picture one. There was no single decisive battle, no clear front line far away from civilians. The fighting happened inside Kyoto itself, in the streets, near temples that had stood for centuries. By the time the worst of it passed, large parts of the city had been destroyed. One account from the time described Kyoto as becoming, in places, nothing more than a place for birds and emptiness. By 1473, 6 years had passed, and both of the men who actually started this conflict were dead. Yamana Sozen died, Hosokawa Katsumoto died, same year, and the war just kept going. Things got so stuck that at one point, both sides dug a massive trench through the middle of the city and just sat there, facing each other, for months. No one knew how to end it, no one even knew where to start, and finally, in 1477, one side did something that wasn't a surrender, wasn't a peace treaty, and wasn't any kind of formal resolution at all. They just went home, exhausted, and with nothing to show for 10 years of war. And Kyoto, the city that had been the heart of Japan for centuries, was left to recover on its own. So, what actually happened here? Because on the surface, this looks like a political fight that got out of hand. But I think what's really interesting is what it tells us about how systems fall apart. The Ashikaga Shogunate hadn't suddenly become weak in 1467. It had been quietly weakening for decades, losing grip on the provinces, losing the respect of the daimyo, losing its ability to hold everything together. The succession dispute was just the moment when all of that finally became impossible to ignore. After the war, the Japanese described what followed with this phrase, gekokujō, which roughly means those below overthrowing those above. Retainers turned on their lords, smaller clans took over from older ones. The old order didn't just weaken, it came apart. And, because the war ended without any real resolution, no peace deal, no clear winner, no new structure to replace the old one, the instability didn't stay in Kyoto. It spread across the entire country. What followed was nearly 100 years of warlords competing for control, with no one able to hold it all together. That's the Sengoku period, and it all started here, with a succession dispute nobody handled, a war nobody won, and a political system that had been running on borrowed time. I think what stays with me about the Ōnin War is this. It didn't start because someone was evil or because some great enemy arrived. It started because a system that people had stopped truly believing in finally ran out of time, and from the long, complicated period that followed, one person would eventually rise who actually managed to start putting things back together. His name was Oda Nobunaga, but that's the next story. Hey, I'm Ren, and this is my first video. If you made it this far, thank you. It genuinely means a lot. I hope the story was worth your time. See you in the next one.